Rain1290 with you, bringing you a very encouraging outlook, something a bit different from thunderstorms, although we are referring to thunderstorms indirectly with a pattern change like this. So yes, we are seeing a pattern change for the east, so you can celebrate with your friends and family if you are looking forward to high heat and humidity, as much as I am. Because we've been lacking, for those in the Northeast and the East in general, you don't have to tell them twice that we've been lacking on heat. Not that it's been bad this June, it's just that we've had very reserved daytime highs and, somewhat cooler overnight lows at times. But we are seeing that changing for the second half of June, and it's a very encouraging change, as I mentioned before. Really, what this could also bring about is a heat wave, a technical heat wave for many of these regions around June 23rd to June 25th. So why don't we investigate that right now? And again, if you guys love these outlooks, if you find them useful, do not hesitate to subscribe for future outlooks. So why don't we get right into it instead of wasting any more time? Okay, so a good place to start looking at areas of cooling and areas of warming is through the jet stream. So this is the jet stream, evaluated at the 250 millibar height, right? So we can actually trace where that jet stream is, the polar jet stream, the subtropical jet stream, just based on these blue and purplish looking colors. Okay, so the polar jet stream, you can just draw it into that effect, and then the subtropical jet stream doing something like that. So really, what I'd like you to see from this is where the jet stream is troughing or valleying, like in this case. So we actually have an example of that in this situation. And then as you go off to the east, you actually see the jet stream rising, right? Or swelling or ridging. So where it valleys, we call this a trough of low pressure, marked by an L. So this is at the 250 millibar altitude. And towards the east, we have this ridge of high pressure, right? That's where warm air tends to get in by comparison. So really what I want to draw your attention to is the extent to which an eastern ridge starts to take form. So let's go forward in time. So as I mentioned, we're in June 17th here. This is the early morning of June 17th, but let's go farther in time. And you actually see that ridging effect really taking hold over the Northeast to June 18th, June 19th. Well, on the 20th, we do have this sizable cooling effect. It's a short-term cooling effect. This could prompt severe weather, but that's a story for another video. But just know that there can be a severe weather threat in the Northeast, including Eastern Ontario, Southern Quebec, upstate New York, parts of Vermont, New Hampshire, etc. Going into June 22nd, now look carefully what happens. We're actually seeing a more prominent ridge or rise or hill, I guess if you want to call it a hill or mountain in this situation, in the jet stream that's taking place over the east, and it's actually staying with us as we go farther in time, right towards the end of this month into the beginning of July. Okay, so what we're looking at here is the 850 millibar height. So this is no longer the jet stream, as I was showing you before. It's much lower in altitude, about 1.5 kilometers above the surface. So essentially 1.5 kilometers above where we are, or approximately 1 mile above where we are at the surface. So what we use this map for is to more intuitively get an idea where warm air advection is occurring and where cold air advection is occurring. So these blue to green colors, as you might have guessed already, represent the coolest air. Whereas the brighter colors like the yellows and the oranges, and especially the darker oranges into reds and even purples, that's where you have the warmest temperatures, right? That's where they're located. So when we talk about the term advection, it essentially refers to where these air masses are able to migrate. So like when we say cold air advection, for example, that represents the coolest air masses able to migrate farther south, and conversely, where we have warm air advection, that's where these warmer blobs or temperatures are able to migrate northward. We're seeing a situation where warm air advection is able to invade the Northeast for a change. So let's look at that in detail and see how that overlaps with the jet stream configuration that I mentioned before. So what I really want to draw your attention to is this clockwise circulation feature over here. So this area of high pressure that's taking place, because high pressure circulates clockwise, right? So something like that. Right? So really what's taking place here is what we call a Bermuda high, and it's a broad scale Bermuda high, and a strengthening one as we go into the second half of June. So this area of high pressure is sticking with us for a while, and it's going to help to channel a lot of this warm, very warm to hot and very humid Gulf air into the Northeast. and southern Ontario to southern Quebec. So we're having a lot of this taking place during the second half of June, as I'm going to show momentarily. So let's go farther in time. So now we're into June 18th, June 19th, and as I mentioned before, we do have a bit of a cool shot here, a pretty sizable one as well, and that again could be a signal for a severe thunderstorm risk in these regions here, including southern Quebec and upstate New York and closely surrounding regions. But going further, just to keep your attention on that ridge, look carefully what happens as this Bermuda high really strengthens and slides and ejects a little bit over the southeast US, creating the southeast ridge, and a pretty strong one to allow the northern sections to take advantage of that warmth. So as we go forward, notice how that ridge really builds. And this could persist as far as June 28th to June 29th. So we're seeing this take place very prominently as that Bermuda high really takes hold and causes the jet stream to really swell in the east, so that eastern ridge. So under that eastern ridge, that ridge of high pressure, we're seeing these very fantastically warm temperatures. This is looking very prominent for the second half of June and summer, a good chunk of the summer. I think this is going to be set in stone for much of it, and being consistent with my own summer outlook. So really what I want to draw your attention to as well, with all of this warmth that's getting into the northeast, is pretty strong around June. So I'll just show you guys again as we go forward in time. June 23rd to June 25th and potentially up to June 27th. This could invite an opportunity for an official heat wave for many of these regions. So for southern Quebec specifically, a heat wave, a technical heat wave, is defined as an event that has at least 3 consecutive days that's spent with 30 degrees or 86 Fahrenheit or greater. So this looks like something that can be satisfied under this configuration as this Bermuda high really strengthens and broadens over the Atlantic and parts of the southeast US. So this will be definitely something to watch going forward, and we can see some very spectacular warmth, especially around June 23rd to June 25th, when we could locally breach 30 degrees pretty easily and even start threatening 35 degrees Celsius. So definitely something to watch going forward, and this will again feature some of our highest humidity. Actually, it will feature our highest humidity so far this year, where we actually see for the first time very high humidity and approaching extreme humidity. June 19th would also offer this opportunity, and June 18th as well, this kind of humidity. Not necessarily the kind of warmth that we're seeing here for June 23rd to the 25th, but the humidity will be similar on those particular days. So if you guys made it this far, thank you very much for your attention. I really appreciate it. If you have any comments, questions, or suggestions, feel free to leave them below. So going forward, I will be providing more of these weather-related outlooks for the East and Northeast. So if this is something that interests you, again, I encourage you to subscribe so that you don't miss out on upcoming videos. And in the meantime, feel free to check out these playlists. They contain other forecast videos as well as footage that we've collected in the Montreal area as well as in Florida, if this is of interest to you. So feel free to check those out. And until then, once again, thank you very much, and I'll see you in the next video. Cheers.